Welcome back, fellas and fellettes. I guess today we start on the wiring on the module, and we will actually be hooking up the bolts too. So anyway, the first step, of course, always have a sip of coffee handy. I love my coffee. So the first step that we do is we measure into the center of the module, because I put crossers at 16 and 32. So if I put my hole in the center of the module for the wires, then it won't interfere with any of the cross pieces down below. And I'm going to show you how I like to do it. And the reason I like to do it this way is just for durability. So anyways, because I'm going through 1.5 inches of foam, almost 1/4 inch of track, and a little bit of ties here, and then of course you got your rail up in the way, you want to have at least 2 inches sticking out on your drill bit. And just so happens this is a 1/8 inch drill bit, so I get a little over 2 out of it. I would rather go smaller because I'm using 18 gauge for my feeder wires, but I just don't know where there are any drill bits that are that long, that are that small. So first thing I do is I drill a hole right down through like so, each side of the rail on the outside. And let me check, make sure it came all the way through. Yep, they did, good. Now, this is the trick I use for doing up against the rail. I've got a pair of pliers here that I use for this job all the time. That I take that much right on the end and I bend it 90 degrees. And then I take the same pliers and go like so and bend it 45 or a hair more. Then I'm going to always use the same thing. The front rail will be white wire, the back rail will be back wire. So I take and I push this down through the hole. Let's get back under here a bit. Push it down through the hole, and I push that up against the rail right there. Let me see if you're still lined up here. Yes, you are. Okay. So anyways, then I will take my pliers and I will push that in snug to the rail, just like so. This needs just a hair bit more bending to keep her tight in there for me. There we go. Come on, get over there where you belong. There we go. There, that's nice and tight there. So let's go ahead and I will run some tinning fluid on there. Grab me some wire, and I will put the soldering iron about halfway in between the piece of wire and the rail. And hopefully it will get it nice and hot. It will flow right in there. There we go. And then of course you can always just check, do a little tug on the bottom, make sure you got it nice and tight. Now let's go ahead and do the other side the same way. And I was telling you just a little bit earlier, I use my black and white wires, and I always use black at the back. It's just something for me that's really easy to remember. So get you pushed down there as far as I can. There we go. Now, a little bit of tinning fluid. There we are. Soldering iron. Put it on here. I'm going to solder in there. There we go. There, just like that, I've got my feeder wires run down. And the thing about this, you can see them now. Oh, still a little hot. You can see them now, but when I get this painted and the ballast on, you can barely see those feeders. Okay, now for our bolts, I took and I sanded the end of the bolts just a little bit right there, because it has 3 little strikes on them, probably for grade 5 bolts. So I just want to make sure we have good electrical contact on the end. So you take your bolt and your washer, just like we did in the first one, push it through your hole, make sure we've got our springiness there. One washer, and you run your nut down. In this case, it just happens to be to the end of the threads. There we go. Now, let me reorganize you just a bit here. Remember the 2 center holes that we drilled in our cross pieces? That's for running our wires through and keeping it up nice to the thing. So what I'm going to do now is put on 1 washer, and then I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this wire here, and I'm going to try to bend a 1/4 inch loop in it. Just put it on here like so and check. There we are. And then I'm going to bend that up 90 degrees. Just like that. I'm going to put my wire on here, and then I'm going to just take and snug it up a little bit. Just like that. I'm going to put on 1 more washer. And 1 more nut. Now, I'll grab a wrench, this 1/4 inch at 7/16. Put that on there. And tighten this up. There we go. That's good and snug. Should have good electrical contact there. Now just pull this on through. We'll try to leave just a little bit of slack so that we've got no problems running in and out. And I do the same thing on the other end, but I'll do that off camera. Okay, you can see there where I've got them all wired in nice and tight, and everything still moves nice and free. I've got just enough slack in the wire to make them slide good. You can see I've got it all the way through to the other end. And it's wired up as well. Now right now, we have to go back to the center. And this is where I tie my feeders in. Now I stripped the center parts out, and by doing that I just use my strippers and run around each side and then just cut out the middle. So I take this 18 gauge wire and run it around here as tight as I can. There we go. Now, just so you know, I am using 14 gauge wire for the main feeder wires on this, for the bus wires. And I've seen a lot of discussion on feeder wires about how big they have to be, but I think the biggest DCC system is, I think 8 amps, if I'm not mistaken, and 14 gauge wire is good for 15 amps. So, and that's what they use in houses all the time to run 15 amp circuits. So that's why I'm using that. But anyhow, now trick with this though, with soldering this stuff, if you don't like soldering, then connectors would definitely be the way to go. But getting the solder to flow on a 14 gauge wire can be a job sometimes. But it looks like we got that one good. As long as you get a good connection so that when it's bouncing around the back of a truck or on a trailer or whatever, it's not going to give you any grief. Now, the number one thing is you've got to get that bus wire hot, or else it just won't stick to it. And then that way it'll flow around the feeder wires when you're soldering to it. There we go. I think we got that one good too. That looks good. So there we go. And that keeps everything, these holes here holding up tight against the foam. It keeps everything all nicely tied up. And let me zoom that back out. There we are. We have the bottom side all wired up. Hey everybody, we have one more test left to do. I've got just a DC controller here. Let's turn her on. Let's give her some throttle. And we will check, see if we have power in our track. Yes, we do, right there, which makes sense. Our wires are hooked up right there. So let's go ahead and check it at the end of the bolts. There we go, finally. There you are, got power. Now let's check this in. Oh, look at that. We have power. You can move in and out. And we have power. Good deal. I dare say wiring up this module has been a success.